BMX contests suck. I'm going to go through what I think a BMX competition should look like, the issues surrounding the current format of competition, and what I think a solution is going to be. My name's Tyson Jones-Penny, and this is another episode of the Backbone Zone. So today, like I said, I'm going to go through what I think is wrong with the current BMX contest. And if I was Scrooge McDuck, what I would do to change it. Potentially, by the end of this video, we're going to have sponsors kicking down the door to approach me to run the new format of BMX competitions, so we'll find out. But I've got a lot of notes here, and I'm excited to share them with you. There's a lot of things that I think will be really, really interesting, so hopefully you can keep listening. Before we get fully into it though, I just want to remind you that Backbone BMX has got new merch. We've got Ratty BMX tees. There is the Rebellion tees, No Weak Links tees, a bunch of new stuff. These hats, for example. Go to backbonebmx.com and check it out. Grab yourself one of the sick new things that I just mentioned. It helps to keep the dream alive with BMX. I want to try and build BMX in an authentic and real deal way. So jump on the website, go grab something. But now I'm going to get into the topic of today's podcast, which, to start with, I'm going to give myself a bit of grace and just say that I understand that there is plenty of people that hate on contests in BMX. It makes total sense. Some people, it's just not their cup of tea. You know, my life definitely does not revolve around being a competition rider or entering contests and things like that. But I have involved myself in BMX competitions, especially in the last probably 6 years, just because I feel like if I don't get involved with it and try to help steer the ship to make it better, then it just is going to be left to outside entities, people that don't ride BMX, and that is just going to make obviously contests lame, but then it's going to make BMX just not as good by comparison. Love it or not, BMX is influenced by contests. X Games is a big reason why there is the current crop of riders, older riders today. You know, same goes with now FIS, even the Olympics. All of these things influence riders, whether the rider at 15 who gets into the idea that they want to be in FIS and be an Olympian, whether at 30 they're the same rider, you never know. But just keep that in mind when we're listening to this. I know that a lot of people don't like contests, but I think that if we had better contests, more people would like them, and it would be more interesting and more valuable to BMX as a whole. So what I have noticed though from my involvement in contests, and even just as a fan of BMX, you know, I'll watch stuff because I love BMX, I guess. I just want to see different aspects of BMX, but especially through being involved with commentating or helping to organize events, it's become really obvious to me that there is elements of competition that just should be completely thrown in the bin and we start again. There should be elements of competition that should be flipped on its head. And then there's elements of competition that are too confusing, and they, in essence, are a good way of looking at contests, but too confusing. So I'm going to go through all of those things, and like I said, at the end, going to give a solution that I think will be a pretty awesome one. And again, sponsors, if you're listening, you want to make BMX sick, keep listening. So I kind of need to, again, I know that I said at the start about contests aren't your cup of tea. I think, to reiterate, contests could potentially be a lot more fun, a lot more enjoyable and celebrated by all BMXers. It's just that the current format of contests, they suck. Not to say that it's not that the riders suck. I just want to make that very clear. The riders don't suck. And I understand that they are competing in the format that it is in BMX now. So I think we could have a much better format. But yeah, before I get going, I just want to make you reframe the idea of competition. Obviously, competition is trying to achieve something, try to get better at something. In contests, it's trying to achieve against other riders to become the best rider of the competition. But, you know, we compete against ourselves all the time in BMX, whether it's to go higher, whether it's to land that new trick, whether it's to film the trick for the video. It's all kind of this contest anyway, and if it wasn't a contest, it'd be no fun. That's what makes BMX so exciting, is you're trying to get better as time goes on, whatever that means to you. Could even mean you want to build a jump that's bigger than the one that you built last. So keep that in mind. Then that way maybe you will be a little bit more open to the idea of competition in BMX. But in the dictionary, a competition is defined as an event in which people take part in order to establish superiority or supremacy in a particular area. I think that is obviously one part of what competition is, and I definitely agree with that. You can't disagree with a dictionary definition. But what I think that we are seeing in BMX competitions or BMX contests is that heaps of people say that they're lame and they don't capture the essence of BMX. And I totally get that, and I would say that is in, you know, very similar. I feel very similarly to that. But most of those gripes come from the actual audience and the people that are watching BMX competitions and contests. I'd say that the actual competitors are more just in the process of what is happening for the contest, and they're involved in what it takes to either win or not win at that contest. But this is where the first part of it comes in, and this is what we need to realize, is that competitions are, yes, a challenge to see who can come first, to be superior in the chosen contest, but the highly important and very overlooked part of any contest is that they aren't entertaining. So BMX contests just aren't entertaining to both the casual and the hardcore rider, which is crazy. You know, we all love BMX, but most people can't stand to watch a BMX contest. But when you break it down, you're watching a 10 to 12 person final. Each rider gets 2 runs that are a minute long. So that's only 20 to 24 minutes of riding, which is nothing. Why does it feel so boring to watch something that's only 20 to 24 minutes long? Which is where we're going to get into it. And the biggest point that we need to realize just to start with is that the reality of any sport is that it is both a combination of assessing how talented someone is and how entertaining it is. We can watch BMX videos that are much longer than 20 to 24 minutes long. In fact, Ranch Hand, which is on our Backbone YouTube channel, is 90 minutes long. Most full-length BMX videos are at least 40 minutes long, some up to an hour or more. People watch those over and over and over again. They're super entertaining. People base their entire BMX existence on, you know, maybe a few videos, really. That's what they mold their entire type of riding from. So it's not to do with that it takes a long time, but it has to do with the fact that the standard format of competition is something that creates boredom or lack of entertainment just by having to watch the repetitive cycle of rider after rider, where it all sort of blends into each other. But That's just touching the surface of the issue, and this is where I'm going to go through 3 issues with current BMX contests and the solution to those problems. And you can see that we've got it wrong as a BMX contest, I think. And hopefully from this video we'll see changes in BMX contests as time goes on. We all know that when we ride, we sweat. But what I bet you didn't know is that when you sweat, you lose electrolytes. And no amount of water is going to put that electrolytes back into your body. You need to use an electrolyte supplement like Sodi. Sodi is an Australian-owned company that has the right amount of sodium, magnesium, and potassium to help fuel your body and get those electrolytes back in. Electrolytes are super important for things like muscle health, brain health, cramps, and even sleep and mood can be affected by electrolytes. So make sure that you're getting your electrolytes back in with Sodi. You can head to the website now, which is sodi.com.au/Tyson, and use the code word backbone to save 15% off. Sodi has these cool little sample packs. There's 6 in there, so you could try it out. Like I said, 15% off. My favorite flavor is passion fruit. They also have pineapple, grapefruit, citrus. They don't use any sugar. There's no crap in them, just heaps of electrolytes. You don't get the same amount of electrolytes in that sugar water that you'll buy from the servo, or those sports drinks that say that they are an electrolyte. They don't really do much at all. So get yourself some Sodi. Your body will thank you. This is for everyday use. I'm telling you, it will change the game in terms of making yourself feel better. So head to sodi.com.au/Tyson. Use the code word backbone. Thanks, Sodi, for being a sponsor of the Backbone Zone. Now, back to the show. So the 3 issues that I'm going to talk about in BMX competition is the judging criteria, 2, the format, and 3, intrigue. So, issue 1, judging criteria. What we reward in competitions is not right. I'm going to go through the current judging criteria for UCI, which is the criteria that's used to judge competitions like FIS, as well as obviously the Olympics, which is the highest level of competition. I'm totally aware that there are other competitions that go on, X Games being one of them, but plenty of other competitions here, there, and everywhere. But for the most part, most competitions riders are in qualifying. They get cut down so that there's only 10 to 12 riders in the final. Those riders get 2 runs, best run counts, and it is based on the following criteria. So there's 11 criteria from the UCI, which is trick difficulty, progression, amplitude, flow, use of course, risk factor, variety of tricks, style, execution, originality, and landings. In the UCI rulebook, it says that the criteria is based on overall impression, which judges get to consider those 11 criteria in order to give a score. It also states in the document that no particular criterion is more important than the other. And that is the first problem that we stumble into. If we look at the current state of BMX contests, it's very clear that riders have focused on trick difficulty as the number 1 priority. And I am here to argue that that has influenced the way judges actually judge. This is why we have so many riders scrapping it out over learning the next big trick, whether it's a triple truck or a triple whip or a triple spin, whether you add a bar spin, etc., etc. You get the gist. It's a very clear progression. You do 1, I do 2, and so on. But I would argue that that is the most linear way to score, and it's also the easiest of the criteria to get good at. So I'm going to go through the criteria again, just quickly so you can hear them. So we've got trick difficulty, which is what we're talking about, progression, amplitude, flow, use of course, risk factor, variety of tricks, style, execution, originality, and landings. Now, what I'm going to give you as an example here, and you can think about this for yourself, but for me it's pretty clear. When you get to a new skate park, is it more impressive to do the trick that you've already learnt on the 6 foot quarter, that's at the skate park that you just visited? Or is it way more impressive to see someone figure out how to own the skate park, jumping across different lines, doing transfers, blasting the hard to air quarter, jumping that hip that you've never seen anyone jump before? In my opinion, and I would say that most people feel the same way, doing the trick is certainly hard and it takes a lot of practice to do the trick. But owning the skate park, basically mastering the use of the skate park, doing things that aren't meant to be done, even at that skate park, that would be if you took it to the extreme, that would be much more difficult because you have to rely on a skill, I guess, of trying to understand how to get used to the quarter pipe first, then get used to a different quarter pipe, seeing if you can carry your speed, etc., before you open up the skate park. So what I am saying is, with trick difficulty, learning tricks is very difficult. There's no doubt about that. But it is much more linear to do than it is to get really good at airing super high, jumping across the skate park, and doing that use of course, part of the criteria. There's a clear path to victory with tricks because you can go to a foam pit, learn a trick good enough to take it from the foam pit to the resi, learn that trick good enough to take it from the resi to the ramp, and now you've got the trick. And so long as you've got the same box jump or you've got a same or very similar quarter pipe, you can apply that trick pretty easily, I would say, at least once you've practiced it. But going to a new park, or even a park that you've been to a million times, and trying to understand how you can own the park, how you can rule it like no one else is doing, so you can transfer from one quarter to another or from one ramp to another, is much more difficult. So I am actually proposing that we take the criteria and we actually put importance on the criteria. So in the UCI, it says that there is no particular criteria that is more important than another, whereas I think that that is wrong. I also think that there is too many criteria, and we can certainly cull them or condense them would be a better word, into less, so that the riders have a more clear idea of what is most important to the judges and then what it is that they have to do. So I'm going to go through the criteria one more time, but this time I'm going to merge them into what I think is new criteria and a much better way of understanding how people can be judged. So we've got trick difficulty. There's also progression and risk factor. Now, I would say that you could merge all three of those into one that's called progression. Because if something's risky, then it's clearly progressive. If something has a hard trick difficulty, then that's clearly more risk factor. And they're all interchangeable. So we're going to get rid of three and merge them into one. Now, flow and landings. Flow is to do, I guess, with how you can flow around a skate park. I don't have to explain to you what it means really. You get the point, how you can flow. And landings is how good you land something. Now, if you're not landing something good, you're not going to be able to carry speed around the skate park and flow around the skate park. So we may as well condense those two into one and just call it flow. The next two that I have is variety of tricks and originality. Now, variety of tricks, the more variety you have, the more original you are. The more you apply different tricks to different ramps or different transfers, the more original you are. So we're going to just merge those two into one and call it originality. Now we've got style and we've also got execution. Now, style, everyone has different style. Things look stylish, but things mainly look stylish because they're executed well. If you do an unclicked X up, it doesn't have style on it compared to if you do a super clicked, over clicked X up. Same goes with if you do a really well executed, no-handed backflip. If it's fully extended, you come in perfectly, that's stylish by default. There's definitely ways that you can implement more style into things, but that, in my opinion, creates a better executed trick, which then leads to execution. So we're going to merge those two, style and execution, together into just style. Then we have use of course. That one has to stay by itself. In my opinion, that is... you can't really do anything with use of course except for to keep it. And then we have amplitude, which again goes into its own one, which is just going to be called roast. You could potentially merge amplitude into style and execution as well, because the higher someone goes when they do a trick adds to the overall style. If you do a tabletop that's only 1 foot high out of a quarter versus if you do it 10 foot high out of a quarter, it could be the same looking table. Obviously the 10 foot high one is going to have more style in it. So the reason why we are going to condense those down is to help with people understanding competition, but then also to tell riders that we are looking at how you use the course as the most important thing. We're then going to go from use of course, and we're going to go into progression and originality working together as the second and third most important criteria. And then from there, we've got style, flow. Style and flow. So we can have 5 or 6 judging criteria options that are way more easy to understand, and also it's going to create riders thinking about how they can apply their tricks to different parts of the course in order to be original and also to show use of course. So that's where I think number one criteria, like the judging criteria, needs to be sorted out so that that issue can be fixed, and then people can understand BMX a lot better. So we've taken care of what matters most in the judging, but we need to look at the format, which is issue 2. So crazily enough, a 10 to 12 rider final is not interesting enough for most people to watch. But we need to think about, rather than how we're going to make a 10 to 12 person final more interesting to watch, we need to change from an entertainment standpoint the idea of how we can judge 2 riders or more, or a group of riders against each other. So with the 10 to 12 person final, that is confusing for people from an entertainment standpoint. Even me, who's ridden for 30 years, if I'm watching a BMX final, like a feast contest or something like that, I can say, oh, I think this rider did good, but then by the time I've watched 10 riders, I'm like, oh, I don't really know maybe there's a clear winner, but all these other ones are pretty difficult. And why did that person get judged so low compared to the other rider? It starts to get confusing, and it's really quite frustrating as not just audience, but I'm sure riders as well. So we need to clearly define who the best rider is from an entertainment standpoint. This is also going to build into the longevity of the sport, and I think that it would really provide a lot more clarity with people being able to jump in and out of watching from an entertainment standpoint. So with the fact that sport is one part competition, seeing who the best rider is, and one part entertainment, I need to point out that sports make rule and format changes to make sports more exciting for the audience all the time. So if you aren't an NRL watcher, so rugby league has brought in over time heaps of different rules to make the sport more exciting, faster gameplay and more opportunities to score and things like this. So if you think about rules like the sin bin, the 20-40 and the 40-20 rule, there's 2-point field goals for, if you kick a field goal outside of 40 meters. All of these things have been done to create more exciting gameplay for the audience, not for the players, although it does work for the players because the players then can see opportunities to make higher scoring opportunities and potential. But it's mainly because it's an audience that's watching it. Otherwise, the sport would stay exactly the same. Even cricket, for example, and I don't watch cricket and I don't find it to be very interesting at all. And that's probably why cricket created the T20, which is also the Big Bash League. So one-day cricket is normally 50 overs. There was even Test cricket. I don't know which one came first. But now there's Big Bash League and T20, and that's only 20 overs. And it's basically promoting cricketers, batsmen, to take more chances and smash the ball. They might get caught out or bowled out or whatever, but they're playing more exciting cricket, which then means that it's more exciting for people to watch, as well as it's probably a faster game, etc., etc. So what I'm getting at is that sports, even sports with long histories, make changes to the actual format of the game to make it more exciting and interesting and promote the sport. So this is where I think BMX competitions need to change their entire format. They need to throw out the 10-rider final, which we're talking for the finals, but even for qualifying, apparently if you go to a feast contest, there can be like 150 people or more trying to qualify at a feast contest. We need to get rid of that idea completely, and we need to create a tournament for BMX that is one-on-one. So as you can imagine, that immediately creates a much more easier to digest format for the viewer. It creates more maybe excitement for the actual rider as well. But from an entertainment standpoint, it's going to be more intense action. It's going to be more enjoyable to watch because you're going to be able to discern, did rider A beat rider B? A lot easier than did rider A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, who came first, who came second, all the way down to 10th. So what I am proposing is that a day tournament can still feature 10 or 12 riders, but it will be in a 5 to 6 head-to-head bouts. This type of competition allows riders to respond to what their competition is doing. It also allows the audience to tune in to the riders that they enjoy, which will help to build to the remedy for the final issue that I'll talk about. The third issue that we have that is ruining BMX competitions is the lack of intrigue. Now, intrigue is what is going to create people watching these contests, which is way more important than you would expect. When people watch something, it obviously creates more hype around something. When there's more hype, it means that there's more commercial interest. When there's more commercial interest, it means that there's expansion of a thing, in this case, contests, which then means that the entire structure of a sport grows. If NRL wasn't $1 billion industry, you wouldn't see so many football fields. You wouldn't see everything to do with NRL, rugby league. Same goes with any major sport. Tennis, everything that there is because they've built a good foundation of intrigue with these sports. They then also, as a side note, build a grassroots system, I guess you would call it. That's why so many people. That's why football, junior footy exists. Really, is to funnel them into the major sporting organisations. It's actually built backwards. You think that sports are created for junior players, and then they can eventually get to the big deal competition, but it's actually the other way around. Big deal competitions created junior football and junior whatever it is, so that then they can feed back up to that high entertainment game. So, newsflash, if you didn't know that, that's why sports exist. It's the other way around. It's top down. Every sport that has a junior program or someone doing it because they love it in the more mainstream sports is because those sports created those junior leagues, like I said, to ascend to professional sporting, which then builds entertainment industry around it. So with BMX, what we're doing is focusing on the competitive aspect, which is great, although I think the competitive aspect has been looked at wrong with the judging criteria and the format, like I've said. But we are lacking in intrigue, which is going to help develop these contests further. When there is no intrigue, it means that there is no interest. And when there is no interest, it means that there is no commercial viability. And when commercial viability is gone, it means that the competition ceases to exist. Now, you might think there's no reason for competitions to exist in general, but you'd be surprised how much competition drives participation in a sport like BMX. I've said this before in a bunch of other podcasts, but it's actually competitions that have created intrigue for many riders to then go on from being that young rider that first got intrigued by the contests into, you name what type of rider they are. A lot of BMX riders, especially from my era, were introduced to BMX through things like the X Games, and then have gone on to be a part of BMX in various different facets. This is the same thing that will happen with all the Olympic riders at the moment. Not all of these kids that are, let's just say 9 to 14 years old and are on this Olympic pathway and they want to become Olympic champion. Not all of these riders will become an Olympic rider. Some of them might find street riding to be highly addictive and they'll go on to just be a hardcore street rider, or they might be a hardcore trail rider, or whatever the case may be. We need to be able to create avenues and windows for people to see BMX in, and from those windows and avenues, BMXs are created, which then helps to solidify BMX as something that continues on for across time. I've said this in podcasts before. Please go back and listen to them. There's one about BMX popularity, I think, that really breaks down this whole issue in depth. But essentially, if you don't have BMX being shown to people in various different ways, then you won't create riders who then go through different tiers of rider enjoyment until they become hardcore BMX lifers, and then, you know, go off and do a bunch of different things with BMX, whether it's building BMX bikes or building trails or, you know, owning companies or whatever the case may be. So we've really got to think about how these contests can be a really big avenue for people, potential BMXers, to get into it. So the best way that I can explain that is actually to show you examples of other sports that have done this really, really well. So I spoke about NRL and cricket, but one that I think that most people will know in 2025 is the UFC. So the UFC has done an incredible job, probably the best job of almost any sport, of creating intrigue with their athletes. So it's a very similar sport. It's a individual sport that is, you know, obviously very dangerous. Takes a long time to learn. You can kind of learn all sorts of different styles, etc., etc. But it is through creating intrigue that organization has flourished like crazy. But then, because of the intrigue that they have created through showing the athlete's journey, they have actually helped the popularity of martial arts as a whole. If you look at one fighter in particular, I'm sure everyone would know the name Conor McGregor. His story and his style and everything that goes on with it, the little things that different people pick up, has created more people getting into martial arts as one person than anyone else. And could you imagine if BMX could do the same thing by creating intrigue in BMX? Now, Conor McGregor is a very polarizing figure. People love him or hate him. I'm not saying that people have to be Conor McGregor at all. But what I'm saying is that there's some people that really identify with any different type of athlete that's in the UFC. And it could be to do with little things like the way they dress, the way they throw a particular kick, their backstory, you know, coming from whether it's a broken home or they've dealt with addiction or they couldn't speak English, or, you know, you name any problem or anything that they've had to overcome, or any style trait that they have. And I don't just mean clothing and fashion sense. All of these things help to build intrigue in an athlete, which then gives the casual viewer a reason to tune in, which then creates, from the casual viewer, they turn into a hardcore fan, and then from the hardcore fan, they can often turn into a user. This is the same with BMX. The same reason why favorite BMX riders are chosen from things like BMX videos. So BMX videos, it might be one line that the rider says. You know, a perfect example is Mike Aitken. He was so revered by riders that there were people called fakins because they would dress exactly like Mike Aitken. You know, so he'd be wearing like Johnny Cash t-shirts. He had, I guess, not girl jeans, but a lot of people would try and replicate the type of jeans that he was wearing. The music choices that he had. He had a Trans Am, was doing burnouts. You know, all of these things are very small things that helped to build rider personality, so that then when you watch him ride, it's all of these things together. You don't know about it, but it is all of these things together creating the style that then helps you to form an attachment to Mike Aiken, which then makes you want to ride like Mike Aiken, and then creates someone who's more willing to participate in BMX for longer. So, to go back to the UFC uses shows like, it's called Countdown and Embedded, and basically they are YouTube videos that they put out for free leading up to big fights that helps the audience create connection and intrigue into the fighters that are going to fight. This is the type of thing that builds the performance. The performance is always going to be the performance that's going to be set by rules and parameters, but it is the intrigue that is given to the audience that creates more likelihood that that actual contest is going to be interesting. Once you have a connection to the athlete, you are going to be more likely to tune in. So, the way that BMX competition needs to do this is through... So the way that BMX needs to create more intrigue in competition is through better commentary. We need to be able to do pre and post game commentary with lead up videos. This could all be on YouTube just to create hype on these riders. I think that by changing the format, these riders are going to be able to focus a lot more on themselves having to battle against one rider rather than to stand out in a big crowd. All right, so where from here? So where to from here? BMX contests, judging criteria needs to change. The format needs to change to a one-on-one with a tournament. And we need to build intrigue amongst all these riders. So, if I was Scrooge McDuck and I had all the money to create it, this is what I would do. I would organize what I would call the Real Deal Rider Championship. It would be building a card initially that would be 5 bouts, so 5 one-on-ones between the best BMX riders from both men and women divisions. We would then make a choice of who battles who in a predetermined fight card. So, and we are going to give away the belt at the first event. So we could have five riding bouts, with the championship bout being between Logan Martin versus Dennis Enison. And then we could also have riders like Jason Watts versus Kieran Riley. We could have Corey Walsh versus Nick Bruce. We could have Kevin Peraza versus Johnny McKellar. We would make lead-in shows explaining the attributes for each rider and what they've been through and who they are, so that people can understand the type of person they are and the type of riding that they do. You would then send all of these riders to an existing skate park that is somewhere and somewhat neutral. So it could be somewhere like Rampfest, for example, that has big box jumps but also has the ability for big transfers. It could be, Marseille in France, or Sydney Park even in Newtown area. You would then judge these riders, new criteria. Like I said, one-on-one. There is specifics that I won't go into. We would give these riders show money and we would give them win money. So it might be, say, $2,000 to show up and compete, and then an extra $2,000 to win. You would give performance of the night bonuses, which would be for, wildest trick done or whatever the case may be. And then obviously the championship bouts would get more money. And then you would build a year or an ongoing championship where riders could then try to get into the rankings. They could then have a bout against a rider, and when they win, they could call out, okay, I want to try and beat Jason Watts. I want to take his spot. He's ranked 4th. I want to be ranked 4th. We could have riders like Alec Daniludi coming in who wants to break into the top 20. There's all these opportunities here to build an ongoing storyline that becomes really interesting, and as well as that, allows for non-typical contest riders to come in and maybe shake it up, or at least have people be super impressed and surprised with the type of riding that they've done. You would be so surprised, I think, if we were able to achieve this, at how different BMX would look and how interesting it would be, because BMX at the end of the day is about riding your bike, and it's about having fun, and it's about learning new tricks and all of these things. But it's the journey and the personality that comes behind BMX that makes BMX so awesome. And it would be such a shame if we couldn't showcase how sick BMX is to the world. I think about, say for example, the Johnny McKellar versus Kevin Peraz, for example, or whoever Johnny ends up facing in this hypothetical contest. To be able to tell his story, to be able to show the type of rider that he is leading into it, and then maybe build him up as an underdog and have him be able to showcase the type of riding that he is capable of against these riders that we don't typically, riders like Johnny, we don't typically see against these riders. It would just be super exciting, and it would also create not as much of a, I came 8th, I needed to do better. Win or lose, Johnny is still going to be celebrated for the type of rider that he is. So this is how we intertwine actual proper BMX culture into contests, which again helps with what I said earlier about why I involve myself in contests in the first place. It's so that I can try to show how sick BMX is to the outside. If we didn't involve ourselves in BMX contests and it was just run by outside entities who didn't ride, there would be a huge facet of BMX that would be lame. So that's it. I'd love to know your thoughts on this one. Obviously, this is a pretty in-depth video, but I've been thinking about it a lot for a long time, to be honest. And I would just love to hear your thoughts in the comments. So please, leave me your thoughts. If you're a sponsor who wants to throw down and make the Real Deal Riding Championship happen, then hit me up, send me an email, or DM me, because that's just scratching the surface. I've got so much more thoughts on particulars on how it would happen. And fingers crossed, if I don't do it, someone else does. That will still be sick. But until next time, thanks for listening. My name's Tyson. Again, head to backbonebmx.com, pick some stuff up, and see you on the next episode.